Cable's destiny was planned before his parents even met. Mr. Sinister wanted to eliminate Apocalypse and discovered that a union between Jean Grey and Scott Summers could produce a powerful, genetically superior mutant. Sinister hoped to control such a mutant and use it to defeat his former master. By then, Jean Grey had been replaced by the Phoenix Force, and after the apparent death of the cosmic entity, many assumed Jean was dead. Sinister created a clone of Marvel Girl and named her Madeline Pryor. The villain gave him a personality that he knew Scott would like and pulled the strings for the two to meet, fall in love, and eventually have a son they named Nathan Christopher Charles Summers. Rachel Summers, Nathan's half-sister who came from another universe, created a psychic link with him so she could protect him and always be around in case he needed her. After losing leadership of the X-Men, Scott retired from the team and raised his son with Madeline. Over time, Scott and Madeline's marriage became strained. Madeline was bothered by the fact that Scott was rarely home and that he continued to miss Jean. Everything got worse when the Avengers found the real Jean alive. Cyclops left his family to go in search of Jean. The two joined the rest of the original X-Men and formed X-Factor, which broke Madeline's heart. Upon hearing of Jean's return, Sinister wasted no time in sending his marauders to capture Nathan and kill Madeline. The clone survived and was left in the care of the X-Men, while Sinister took Nathan to his laboratory to experiment on him. The villain was thorough and erased all records of Nathan and Madeline's existence. Scott later returned to Alaska to reconcile with his family, but there was no sign of them except for a baby toy he found abandoned in his old house. Scott believed Madeline had moved away with the baby. While with the X-Men, Madeline discovered the reason Scott had abandoned her and slowly lost herself to the dark side of her personality. Madeline agreed to help the demon Semen Naster create a link between Limbo and Earth in exchange for getting her son back. Destiny led Scott and Jean to Sinister's laboratory where they found Nathan and many other children in incubation pods. The demons escaped with Nathan and the other children to Times Square where the Goblin Queen began the ritual to unite Limbo with Earth. After learning that she was a clone, Madeline lost her mind and was willing to sacrifice her own son to carry out the ritual. Luckily, the X-Men and X-Factor managed to stop her, but Goblin Queen apparently died in that battle and her memories were transferred to Jean, including those of Nathan's upbringing. After this, Jean agreed to take care of Nathan with Scott, who began taking him on missions after the baby began to develop his powers, which included a bubble of telekinetic force that protected him from harm. At that time, Apocalypse learned that Cable, an old enemy he faced in the past, was the son of Jean and Scott, so he sent his Dark Riders to kidnap him and infected him with the techno-organic virus in the hopes of diminishing his can. The boy nearly died, but a visitor from 2,000 years in the future, Sister Ascani, appeared before the heroes. She had sacrificed her physical body to become energy and claimed that Nathan would become a savior in her time. The mysterious woman promised them that the Ascani clan would cure him of the virus in the future. However, she could not perform another time jump, trapping Nathan in the future. Scott decided to save his son's life and handed him over to Sister Ascani, believing he would never see him again. Arriving on this future Earth ruled by Apocalypse, Nathan was handed over to Mother Ascani, a time-displaced version of his sister, Rachel Summers. The Ascani clan worshipped Nathan as they believed he was the one destined to defeat Apocalypse. Mother Ascani placed Nathan in an incubation crib to preserve his life, but the virus had progressed too far. Fearing that Nathan would not survive, Mother Ascani had him cloned. Despite their original assessments, the Ascani learned that the original child would live after all. At that time, the Canaanites attacked the base. Nathan was safely removed before they nearly killed Mother Ascani and began the clan massacre. Apocalypse himself claimed the cloned boy, whom he mistook for the real Nathan. The villain raised the clone and named him Strife to use as a container the next time he needed a new body. Seriously injured, Mother Ascani brought Scott and Jean to the future to protect Nathan. Since their own bodies could not have survived time travel, Jean and Scott inhabited new cloned bodies of their descendants. It had been a long time since they last saw Nathan as a child. At that point in their lives they were married and had learned that Cable, a recurring ally of the X-Men, was the future version of Nathan. Not long after their arrival, Apocalypse's soldiers captured Nathan. Scott, Jean and Mother Ascani managed to save him, but the mother was seriously injured and fell into a coma. Under the aliases Red and Slim Dayspring, Jean and Scott raised Nathan together while Rachel was in a coma, kept alive by machines. They never told Nathan what their true origin was, and they never stayed in one place for long. They began Nathan's training in hopes that he would become Cable and eventually fulfill his destiny by overthrowing Apocalypse. The techno-organic virus had already spread to the left side of Nathan's body, giving him a cybernetic appearance. Red taught Nathan to use his telekinetic abilities to slow the effects of the virus and telepathically mask its presence. At age 8, Nathan met Strife during a clan rebellion raid on Apocalypse's citadel on Crest Coast. Surprised by their resemblance, Strife was defeated by Nathan. Unfortunately, the techno-organic virus began to seriously affect Nathan, who fell into a coma. Rachel telepathically communicated with her brother and explained that he was potentially the most powerful mutant to ever exist and that if he sacrificed the maximum use of his telekinesis daily, he could contain the virus. The boy did so and managed to wake up from the coma, but keeping the virus at bay required him to use almost all of his power constantly. The day Apocalypse tried to take over Strife's body, Nathan and his parents stopped him and the villain apparently died. However, the battle caused Jean and Scott's consciousness to return to their time and they both had to abandon their son for a second time. Years passed and Nathan continued to fight those who tried to take Apocalypse's place. On his adventures, he discovered the true identities of Red and Slim, as well as hearing stories of his adult self who had gone to the past to help the X-Men. Due to the constant changes in the timeline, reality was destabilized, causing the death of Cable's friends. Blacksmith informed him that the adult Cable failed to bring the original X-Men back to their time, which would trigger the death of young Iceman, an event that would completely change history. Upon learning this, a young Cable traveled back in time to return the original X-Men to their time. To achieve his goal, he killed his adult self from the past and used some of the Phoenix's power to resurrect his father who had been dead since death of X. In the end, Cable achieved his goal and the timeline was restored. Nathan then traveled to Transia and worked with Deathlock to search for Rachel Grey. During this time he was forced to work with X-Force, who were actually tracking him to avenge the adult Cable's death. Young Cable was also present during the era of Krakoa and lived alongside Jean Grey and her father on the moon. He worked alongside Psylocke and X-23 on some deck missions. Nathan also began a romantic relationship with the 5 Kaku's sisters, the cloned daughters of Emma Frost. After discovering Strife's kidnapping of mutant children, Cable convinced the Council to resurrect his older self. After this, the two Cables gathered their allies and launched an attack on Strife. After defeating him, the young Cable returned to the future. At some point Cable, still a young soldier, traveled to the late 21st century where he joined the Avengers 2099. During the rise of the criminal group known as the Cabal, the heroes were defeated and Cable escaped back to his time. He later returned to the year 2099 to help the X-Men defeat the villains. After this, he returned to his respective timeline. Upon returning to his time, Strife began wearing his signature armor and very rarely took off his mask. Meanwhile, Nathan became the main military leader of the opposition of the New Canaanites, the Chosen Clan, and continued the customs of the Ascani. During the war between these opposing forces, Nathan and Strife clashed repeatedly, becoming bitter enemies, even though Nathan did not know that Strife was the same boy he had seen when he was 8 years old. After losing the war to the Neo-Canaanites and growing tired of the fighting, Nathan decided to defy his Ascani training and destroy Apocalypse before he took over the world. Using time travel technology, Nathan traveled to ancient Egypt, shortly after Ensaba-Nur encountered the Celestials. Cable faced Ensaba-Nur believing that he could prevent him from becoming Apocalypse. What he did not know was that those same fights were what led the first mutant to become the villain he is today. This created a time loop between Cable and Apocalypse, as one could not exist without the intervention of the other. Nathan returned to the future and, after decades of battle, the chosen clan signed a lasting peace treaty with the new Canaanites, but Nathan, upset by rumors that Apocalypse had survived in the future, convinced the clan's Ascani council they needed to fight again, but the clan did not agree. This led to a new war where Cable and his friend Tetherbud led a squad to recover Captain America's shield, which Nathan used to inspire freedom and justice to his followers. After the new Canaanites defeated the new Canaanites, Nathan learned that Strife used the Tenex and, with Unit 0 Atom, fled, traveling back in time to the end of the 20th century. As part of his mission as Ascani's son, Nathan returned to the 20th century to thwart Strife's plans. When Nathan first arrived in the present, he appeared, confused and traumatized, in Scotland and met Drive. Moira McTaggart, who cared for and protected him. She taught him literature, art, and other subjects, bringing him up to date on the century and bringing him into contact with Charles Xavier. Nathan, who now calls himself Cable, traveled between the past and the future several times. To understand the threats of the current era and obtain funding, Cable formed a mercenary group called the Wild Pack, later known as the Six Pack, and began selling his advanced weapons of the future. After the Six Pack was decimated, Cable returned to his time seriously injured. In the future, Cable discovered records indicating that Sam Guthrie, the mutant known as Cannonball, existed at least until the 23rd century. The hero believed that Sam would be the next in a group of immortal mutants known as the Externals. Cable returned to the present to take command of the new mutants and guide Guthrie's ascension to the Externals. After this, Cable trained the first incarnation of X-Force to carry out missions that conventional X-Men would not dare to execute. During the events of Executioner's Song, Strife impersonated Cable and attempted to kill Professor X. Strife's bullet had infected Professor Xavier with the techno-organic virus. Strife also asked Mr. Sinister to kidnap Jean Grey and Scott Summers. The two, with the help of Cable, defeated the clone and discovered that Cable was actually their adult son Nathan. Strife's body was destroyed during the battle, but his consciousness merged with Cable's. Over time, Strife took control of Cable's body, but thanks to X-Force, Nathan managed to suppress his clone's personality. Sinister tracked down Cable, revealed Madeline Pryor's true origins to him, and subsequently attempted to take control of him. The villain was defeated thanks to the help of Jean and Professor Father. This allowed the two to reconcile. When Apocalypse tried to take over the body of Nate Grey, a Cable variant from another universe, Cyclops saved him, but the villain's psyche bonded with him. With Jean's help, Cable managed to separate En-Sabah-Nur and kill him, thus fulfilling his destiny. However, Cable continued his mission feeling that the future was not yet certain. When a cure for the techno-organic virus was finally discovered, Cable managed to suppress it, which dramatically increased his powers. He was deciding how to use his new abilities when he ran into Deadpool, who had been hired by the One World Church to steal a virus that would turn everyone on the planet blue. Reluctantly, the two agreed to work together to stop the church. Not long after this adventure, Cable's powers returned to normal levels. During the events of Hoys of M, Cable noticed that mutants were very divided, so he decided to use his technology to bring Apocalypse back so the X-Men would unite against him. Nathan was confident that, eventually, the X-Men would defeat the villain. When the first mutant baby was born after M-Day, Campbell immediately knew that various groups would try to take the child, so he saved her and took her to the future to take care of her. There he met a woman named Hope whom he married. The woman later died trying to protect the baby. Because of this, Cable decided to name the girl Hope Summers in honor of her stepmother. Together they survived the Brood invasion and the hunt for a crazed bishop who tried to kill Hope. When Hope, now a teenager, wanted to go back in time, Cable reluctantly agreed. They managed to return to the present, only to be attacked by the Human Council of Bastion. Hope escaped with Rogue and Cable fought alongside the X-Men once again. Cable apparently sacrificed his life to save Wolverine and his X-Factor team, leaving Hope heartbroken. In reality, the hero traveled to the future where he met Blacksmith, who convinced him that the world had been destroyed because the Avengers killed Hope. Together they traveled to the past to stop the heroes. Cable managed to defeat several Avengers, but was stopped by Cyclops, who took him back to Utopia, where he was left in a coma. There, Hope cured him of the techno-organic virus using the power of the Phoenix. On the astral plane, Cable made Cyclops promise that he would do whatever it took to protect Hope when the Avengers came for her. After the war between the Avengers and the X-Men, Cable woke up from a coma and left Utopia, leaving Hope a note asking her not to follow him. He located Forge, who had gone insane and presumed dead, and used his telepathic powers to create a psychic scenario that allowed Forge to repair the damage to his psyche, curing him of his madness. Cable had begun to receive visions of disasters and needed Forge as part of a team to prevent these events from happening. For a time, Cable helped the Avengers unit hunt down a clone of the Red Skull who had stolen the brain of the late Charles Xavier, and was necessary in the fight against Hank Pym, who had been possessed by Ultron. After Cable's younger self discovered that the presence of a group of time-displaced X-Men in the present would bring about a catastrophic future, he set out to capture and neutralize the young mutant heroes. When the younger Cable targeted the time-displaced young Iceman, the adult Cable tried to protect him. His younger version blamed him for his actions, arguing that he neglected his duty. Cable stated that the young X-Men needed to see what would become of them so they could then return to their proper time with that knowledge and improve. Cable allowed his younger self to take the lead and kill him, accepting that he had become weak. After the younger Cable accepted the fact that he needed his older self to help defeat Strife, he urged the Five to get his older self back, even though Cyclops did not want him to. Scott believed he would lose the younger version of his son and wanted him to have a chance at a better life on Krakoa than his older counterpart had. Knowing that the missing babies were about to be sacrificed, and having received Jean's blessing, the younger Cable had the Professor and the Five bring Cable back exactly as he was before his death. With the era of Krakoa coming to an end, Cable's future remains a mystery. But rest assured that when the timeline is in danger or Apocalypse becomes a villain again, Cable will return to help the X-Men in their fight for acceptance.